and then voila. All right, so we're getting to the end of Sweet X Salty. And since this is gonna be the last episode for this series, I really wanna show you guys my signature dessert for here, my upstairs dining room. So this dessert has been in the making for like a solid 5 years. And every time it's always changed and changed. The first version was just shit. It was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing and I thought it was really cool. And then I changed it up. Set it up for a pressure test at MasterChef, and even that looked terrible. My recipe was everywhere. Third version, I refined it a bit more. Fourth version, that's what I'm gonna make today, okay? So if you've got the balls for it, go for it, because this is gonna be something where I haven't made before. It's just a redesign of my signature dessert. Anyways, let's have some fun. I am gonna be making one of my signature desserts that I first created 5 years ago. And over the years, it's evolved, it's changed, it's refined, and it got better and better and better and better. And today I wanna do this dessert, version number 4. And of course, some of you may know it, it's called Moss. And so it's gonna be Moss 4.0. I'm gonna give you a little sketch of what it looks like in my head, because I've actually never made it before. Today will be the first time making it. So let's just hope that it works. Moss 4.0, let's do it. It'll be a really cool looking cube. I'm really bad at arts, by the way. It'll have this sponge thing over here. And then it'll have some apple slices. Ice cream's gonna go at the bottom. The cube inside, I'm gonna do a pistachio mousse. Inside's gonna be a whole heap of caramel. It's gonna be coated in a white chocolate matcha. And then it'll have this really cool, like, smoky yogurt snow. I'll have some beautiful herbs on it as well. Oh, and also the most important part, some matcha crumble, which will be sticking around here. And then in the inside, caramelized white chocolate cream. So I think that looks somewhat pretty all right in my head. Look, let's get started, let's get cooking. The first thing we're gonna start on is the insert, which is most important. This dish is an 8-component dish. It has a lot of recipes, little parts of it, which you can make at home. So first things first, we're gonna start on with the caramel insert. So in this pot here, I've got some glucose and sugar. And what we wanna do is almost burn this. We're gonna get this caramel really nice and dark. And here I've also some glucose, milk, and cream. And this is gonna be a hot milk mixture. And also inside the milk, I'm gonna add some vanilla paste. The temperature is roughly about 175 to 180 degrees. It's a dry caramel. Glucose has a little bit of moisture in it anyway. Have some nice sea salt, Smelden. You can get that at shops anywhere. And the reason why I'm using a bit of glucose and a bit of sugar, for 2 reasons. One is texture, and the other one is actually the sweetness. It won't be too sweet. You'll get more of a savory, moreish kind of note without it being kind of overly sweet and rich. So while my cream is already hot, take it off the heat. So this caramel is smoking up, but it's not burnt. So now we're gonna add in the hot cream, little by little, because it'll start spitting up. It's like tempering eggs in a way, because if you add in your cream too fast to the really hot sugar, it's just gonna seize up the sugar. The very last thing that I'm going to do is add in the salt. The salt, of course, is a seasoning. Go by taste. The saltier, the better. No, obviously not too salty. Just look how beautiful and glossy that is. It's epic. And of course, caramel needs butter. Unsalted butter. Chuck that in. You add that last. So we're going to try and cool the caramel down as we add the butter in as well. And looking super glossy. Really, really nice. So we're gonna set the caramel aside to cool down. Gonna add some salt. All right, I'm gonna leave it as is, let it cool down. If it needs more salt, I'm gonna add it a bit later. Next thing we're gonna work on is the Pistachio Monte, which is an eggless mousse, I think. I'm not exactly too sure. It's just a recipe I got from my mom. So in here, I've got in a bowl some white chocolate, and we're gonna melt it in a pot of water. So we're gonna add our pistachio paste to the white chocolate, melt it all together. Almost like making a white chocolate pistachio ganache. So while our pistachio and white chocolate are melting, we're gonna whisk this cream. Thickened cream aerates a lot better. And at the same time, I've also got gelatin. And later, we're going to add it into our hot melted chocolate with pistachio. Sugar into the cream. And we're gonna whisk it into soft peaks. So to dissolve the sugar, whisk it into the cream, soft to medium peak. All right, so for me, that is pretty much done. Don't want it to be too firm, because when you fold everything together, it may over whip. And if you don't over whip it and it gets really firm, when you pipe it into the mold, it's gonna get over whipped for sure. Fill the bowl, make sure it's warm. And when it is warm, that's where you can add your gelatin that's softened up from the water. Pop the gelatin in and gonna give the gelatin a little stir. So gentle heat. So I'm just using the residual heat of the pot. And you get this nice glossy pistachio paste. You get this really nice, glossy and super airy mousse. It's one of my favorite mousses as well. Our last edition. Woo. That's a nice looking mousse. Give it a taste though. We're gonna use our mold. This particular brand of silicone mold is from, I don't know, 2 companies, Silicomart or Pavoni, one or the other. And if you're in Australia, you can get this from Saver School as well. And none of this is sponsored, so it'd be really good if you guys can sponsor me. Mousse into a piping bag. And when you guys see me swing my piping bag, it's because you want to get rid of all the air pockets. We're only gonna pipe this, let's see, what was that, 2/3 of the way, because later we're gonna pop in the fridge, scoop out the middle, and then put it in the caramel. Oh, perfect. This can be stored in the fridge, and you can even, like, if you're at home, just grab like, I don't know, it's like a cup or something like that, fill it halfway, and you can put all the other toppings on top. It's so easy, and you don't have to make it super fancy, but we're going full fancy today. Next component we're gonna do is the Dulce, which is the caramelized white chocolate cream. And to make this Dulce cream, we're gonna use white chocolate, and we're gonna bake it in the oven at 165 degrees for 15 minutes. Get yourself some really good white chocolate. This is covered chocolate. And all we're gonna do is just spread it out, not too, you don't want it to kind of like pile up all too much, because what happens is it caramelizes on the outside, the inside kind of gets a bit, half cooked, half not. It goes as even as possible. Okay, into the oven. Fresh out of the oven. So hot. Nah, I made this before. So this is what it's gonna look like. It looks burnt. It actually might be burnt. Let me test it. Oh, it's pretty good. All right. It's caramelized. Just like at the very edge. Like, it is so close to burning, but that's actually so good. This is gonna get blended up with our Creme Pat. Creme Pat it's a French pastry cream, and it's a basic cream as well. That's really easy to do. I'm gonna show you how quick it is to make. So egg yolks into a bowl with some sugar. Break it up. Now for your cornflour, this is gonna be the thickener. So once our milk is boiling, switch it off. Hot milk. And we're gonna just stream it in, little by little. That's not exactly streaming, but like, you don't want to add too much because you don't want to scramble the eggs. So just stir it in gently. A bit more in. And the moment you get to this point, you can add everything. You can add the rest of the milk in. Just like that. Now back into the pot. So if you have a gas stove, put it on medium high, but don't go away. You want to stay. Keep stirring, and at one point, you'll start to feel it thicken up like by heaps. That's when the cornstarch is actually activating and swelling up. Done. Very, very quick. Also very, very easy. So while this is still hot, I've got some gelatin again. Stir it in. Make sure all your gelatin's dissolved. Now back to the chocolate. Into a jug or a canister. And just like a ganache, what we're going to use is a blender, a hand blender. This is heaven already. It's so good. It even smells so good. So now into a container or to a tray. We're going to cool it down first before we add in a whipped cream, which will make it a lot fluffier. And that's called a diplomat cream. All right, so next up we're going to do is the matcha crumble. So in here I've got some rice flour, some flour, sugar, matcha powder. Make sure you get a good one, and a bit of butter. And we're going to add in 1 egg into this whole recipe. As usual, pinch of salt. Let's check up on our salted caramel. That is looking freaking good as well. Now, caramel does not freeze. So what do we do if it doesn't freeze? Because we want to put into that mold in the center of the pistachio and everything. To help it make it freeze, we're going to add a bit of milk. I think it's like for every 250 grams, it's 50 grams of milk. I'll put in the recipe so you guys can see. But I'm just going to go by eyeball. Bit of milk. That's going to dilute everything. And this milk, since it's not cooked or emulsified into it fully, and it has more water content to it, it's going to help this caramel freeze. A little taste first, just in case. Still good. A lot of matcha. Low speed. Add the egg in. And all that moisture is going to get absorbed into the flour, and it's going to be a really nice dough. So that was on low speed, and the dough is formed. Okay, get us pastry scraper. So usually I would go over 2 trays. So we're going to go half the dough. So a bit spaced out evenly, and we're going to bake this in the oven at 155 for 26 minutes. The next thing for our dish, it's going to be a pistachio microwave sponge. You're going to need one of these contraptions. It's a siphon gun. So we've got nitrous oxide, which is a cream charger. Pop it in, and everything's going to go into here. So it's got some sugar, flour, 2 eggs, and 1 egg white, and pistachio paste. And everything gets blended up again. So we're going to blitz this up into the siphon. All right, so next we get our coffee cups. Here's a few holes. 1, 2, 3. Be on the side. Watch your hands. Watch your hands. I've stabbed myself many, many times. And we're all going to fill it halfway because all that aeration from this is going to rise up as the heat gets, introduced. All right, that's out of the microwave. It's steaming. smells so good and really fluffy and super moist. So rest it upside down, and that's gonna keep all the heat, steam and everything going up, encapsulating into this cup. And also the gravity kind of keep the, I guess the integrity of the sponge, keeping that whole airy. Leave that aside. So the mousse should be set by now. And what we're gonna do is just create a hole in the middle. But as I'm going up, I'm gonna cover the edges, making sure that it kind of creates a barrier for the caramel to sit in. I've got some caramel frozen in a spherical mold, so we're gonna use a bit of that and see how it goes. So push it into the middle. Let's pour a bit of caramel into these. I'll kind of work around. This looks really podgy, but fix it up because I don't want any air pockets. Use spatula. Into the freezer. So these will be done first. I've actually got some in the freezer already that are ones like this. The caramel's done. We've got everything else done. This little next part is the coating that we want to do for our dessert. And this is our chocolate dip. I'm gonna pop it all into a cup. So I'm gonna heat this up a little bit more and over hot water. All it is a mixture of 2 parts of chocolate, white chocolate in particular, and 1 part of cocoa butter. And that's really important because the cocoa butter will help it kind of temper everything really quickly. It's like ice magic. You get ice cream, vanilla ice cream, you make this recipe and you love your ice magic, just pour it on top. It's done, quick temper. You can coat your mousses into it as well when they're frozen. And that's kind of like a really cheap way to have that beautiful coating. So we're gonna keep this one warm to loosen it up. And that's gonna be at very, very end. So the cream is already set. That's the base. Got our old spatula, use this. And you can chuck everything into the whipped cream. Just make sure you really, really get as much as you can. This is gonna go into a piping bag. You can store it into a container if you want. Eat it with, I don't know. You can put some cookie crumbles in there or some Oreo. And you have yourself like really, really delicious custard. When you let it set in the fridge a bit more, it kind of firms up. We're gonna put some into a piping bag. And then we're almost there. We're actually almost done. And also, if your piping bag is really messy like this, and I hate it, grab yourself a pastry scraper and just tidy it up into the fridge until we need it. All right, so after that, we're gonna add a bit more acidity to this dish, and it's going to be the lime curd. Okay, so what we're gonna do next is bring this to a simmer. And meanwhile, we're just gonna combine the eggs, whole eggs and sugar together and just slightly whisk it. And just like the creme pat, we're gonna temper these and then back onto the heat, but this time over a double boiler, which means hot water underneath. And we're gonna cook it until it thickens up. Whisk in the hot liquid. Get rid of this. And now you're gonna use the hot water and cook it over medium-high heat. Just leave it like that, walk away, come back, stir it once in a while. So we've got our matcha baked, and just let it cool down because all that sugar is still molten. And once you let all the sugars kind of set and crystallize again, the inside will be nice and green still without it kind of discoloring. So once you blend everything together, you get a nice, beautiful green matcha soil. So our matcha dip is looking pretty good. Not too hot, not too cold, just warm. We're gonna dip our frozen mousse. So once the mousse is fully solid, we're gonna demold it. I wanna plate it in a very odd way, kind of like this. So for me to present it like that, I wanna skewer like one of the bottom corners. Just a little bit, not too far in, okay? But enough for it to hold. It's gonna be dipped in and out. And that cold mousse is going to immediately set the chocolate. Just like that. You can see it kind of go opaque as it sets. I'm gonna grab a tray and then it's gonna defrost, put in the fridge. And we're gonna be plating up real soon. But when you remove it, see that little bit here that's sticking out? We're gonna use a hot knife and cover it and seal it, because if there's a caramel inside, you skewer it too far and you don't seal it, all that caramel is gonna ooze out. Quickly heat up the knife. And we're gonna hide this little imperfect spot. You can flatten it a bit more if you want, but this side of the cube, we're not gonna really see it. The cubes that are frosting, I'm gonna leave it outside for a little bit. It starts to crystallize, starts to condense, and that's when you can start to remove a bit of water by a paper towel. Best to leave it overnight in the fridge, uncovered as well. All right, so our curd is looking pretty much done. You don't want to go further than that because it starts to dry out too much. The next thing we do is to blend it again. And you'll see the color change as well as the texture. So when you're making curds, making it super, super smooth, this is the little trick as well. You can keep it like that, put it in the jar, it'll last for months. This curd looks really, really loose for now because we've blended up. And when you put it in the fridge in a container or a jar, it'll thicken up overnight. So for now, I'm just gonna pop it to a container and leave that when it sets. I've got some already in the fridge in a squeezy bottle. So it thickens up really nicely. All right, so our mousse is done. Chocolate is done. So our sponge is done. We're gonna do just kind of tease the edges. Go up with a scissor. And then out it pops. Really nice, airy, fluffy, very pistachio-y. All right, so I've got this apple sorbet that's been churned. It's so nice with a special machine. You guys can have the recipe, and if there's a few chefs out there working in a restaurant, this recipe is perfect for a package jet, and especially for a green apple sorbet. So I've got my plate, very forest-like, emerald, kind of like a jewelry box, because the way I want to present it is like that. So it's kind of like a gem. Now, I want to kind of make it a bit more interesting. So with our matcha crumble, check. Our lime yogurt foam that we're going to cook in nitrogen. Okay, so we'll do that now. And then we've got our apple sorbet as well and sponge and everything all checked. So at the restaurant, what I do is, I do this a lot on the show as well because it's one of those things that I love to create. Just liquid nitrogen kind of creates different textures and changes everything. It makes it a bit more interesting as well and more kind of theatrical. My hands have been cooked by nitrogen so much that it doesn't even hurt that much anymore. Don't do that at home. You don't even have one at home anyway. So, lime yogurt foam. Slotted spoon. And what we're gonna do is just brush it. So I'm hoping to put this on the menu at the restaurant. Still my first trial of this dish, so give me a break. So it's kind of disguise everything up. This is just a little trial. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Gonna try to be as natural and a bit messy as well. Since this dish is called moss, it kind of needs to look like one, right? So there we go, from there. Now this needs a bed. So I got a plate here. You grab a few chunks of this pistachio sponge. A couple on the side. It's gonna pipe our Dulce cream. Sorbet down in the middle. A little scoop of it. I'm gonna stab this one in. Alright. Hold a little bit of this. This is actually unnecessary, but I just like it for the looks. Okay. It's kind of like a jewelry box slash kind of, I don't know, gem-ish look. Let's put it on. Lime curd. That's what I was missing. Okay, 5 dots of that. And then I'm gonna add a few slices of fresh apple. So, okay, I got a ring cutter. Thinly slice these apples, not too thin though, and also not too thick. Just want something just like that. It's nicely enough that it can hold without it being too floppy like this one. So what we're gonna do next with these apples, gather them together, and nothing goes to waste. So what I do, I actually keep these apples, the offcuts, and use it for the sorbet. Make a little ellipse out of it, okay? And then what we're gonna do is just jam them somewhere around the middle, just around. And lastly, to kind of top everything all together, gonna add some matcha powder. Gonna bring some vibrance into it. I'm not sure what these things are called, but they're for tea. And they're the perfect little guys to kind of dust. Just dust around. All right, now for the final touch. I'm gonna add a bit of this in one corner, a bit of that in the other corner. And then to serve, this goes upstairs. And then voila. I think that looks pretty cool. I don't know. This is probably the first, this is still the first trial. So I think it looks quite all right, but I know the flavors are all there as well. That's the most important part. And there you have it. That's my Moss version 4.0. It's got a little bit of components that are from the previous 2 versions to make it into something like this. It's more of a redesign, a bit more kind of, you know, texturally, visually a bit more different, as well as the way I serve it in the restaurant. So I'm going to give this a few more trials, the way I want to present it. Maybe add a few more flavors in there as well before I can put on the menu. But I think that's roughly how I want it. And hopefully that's, you know, it's gonna be a good seller. What I love about this is that you get the richness from that caramel, the Dolce. So you get 2 different kind of caramels in there and textures. The Pistachio Monte actually brings a bit of richness and fluffiness to it as well. And kind of this density that kind of, it makes it a bit unique. Almost like a ganache that's a lot lighter. And it's super light, bit of acidity from the lime yogurt, different textures from the crunch from the apple, the chocolate, the crumble, and the kind of flavors of like something really earthy, the earthiness from the matcha, pistachio, and then just refreshes your palate all the way back again when you dig into that sorbet and you go in for another one and again and again and again. So I'm really happy with the flavors, the textures as well. Not too happy with the plating, so I'm going to do another one and see how it goes. That's my other version, which I'm not too sure about. You let me know. One, number two. Alright, so guys, that's my Moss 4.0. It's still in trials, but you can find it upstairs in the menu soon at Koi Dessert Bar. And thank you so much, and I really hope you enjoy this episode. And that, there's all these recipes aren't always so technical. These are all doable components. You don't need all these fancy equipment or fancy ingredients as well. There's little things that you can break up and make into your own dessert. Thanks, guys. Oh, so slow. All right, halfway like so. Into the microwave for 45 seconds. Fuck! You guys want to try? Fuck yeah! Fuck yeah! Yeah!